This is a topic that you are going to encounter in everyday practice. So it's a very important one so that you understand that how to treat the skin and soft tissue infections. So to begin with, first we'll be talking about the superficial infections with regards to erysipelas, cellulitis and all those. So what do you mean by erysipelas? Erysipelas mostly is going to be caused by group A Streptococcus, even though sometimes it can be caused by, sometimes it can be caused by Staphylococcus aureus as well. So I can write group A Streptococcus followed by Staph aureus. So it can be caused by Staph aureus as well, but most of the times when you talk about erysipelas, it's going to be group A Streptococcus. For sure, there's no doubt about that. This is the most common organism that's going to produce erysipelas. So it's a very superficial infection, meaning that it's going to affect only the upper part of the dermis, and to some extent it can extend to the lymphatics, but it's going to predominantly cause infection of the upper part of the dermis. That's it, nothing more. So the most important key point with regards to erysipelas is the fact that it's going to be well demarcated. So which means there will be a clear-cut line of demarcation. So that is what you're going to identify and find out whether it's erysipelas or not. It's a very well demarcated lesion. Whereas cellulitis is going to be more diffuse. It will be poorly demarcated. That's why that point is important. It's a well demarcated lesion. And it's going to be very much erythematous. So the reason why it's called erysipelas is the fact that it's going to be very erythematous in nature. And in case if it's going to occur in the face, it's also going to produce that characteristic butterfly face. So this is not a butterfly rash, which is also called as mala rash that occurs in SLE. This is a different thing. So the name that they have given is something called as butterfly face. So diabetes is supposed to be the most important risk factor. Apart from that, obesity is a risk factor, venous disease like chronic venous insufficiency, and probably varicose veins. All those things are going to be risk factors as well. And tinea pedis, if there is fungal infection of the legs, of the feet. So that's going to act as a strong risk factor. We have seen a lot of patients with lymphangitis, erysipelas, and even cellulitis in patients who are having background fungal infection of the legs, that is tinea pedis, and lymphedema, of course. So anything with regards to lower limb disease, especially skin disease, that's going to act as risk factors. But according to me, the number one risk factor is going to be diabetes, which is very, very important. So diagnosis is purely clinical. So there is no specific investigation that's going to help you diagnose erysipelas. So most cases require just oral penicillin or penicillin derivatives like amoxicillin or cefalexin. Cefalexin is a first generation cephalosporin. So that's going to be more than enough because it's, after all, a streptococcus. Streptococcus is something that can be easily treated with any kind of penicillin. In case if it's severe, it's rare. Severe disease, I don't think it's going to be common. It's going to be very, very rare. So in those situations, you can use something called as intravenous penicillin G, or maybe IV ceftriaxone or IV cefotaxime. Anything is fine. Or IV amoxicillin, clavulanic acid. So anything is fine according to me. So some form of penicillin or penicillin derivatives can be given, and it's going to be more than enough to treat the streptococcal infection. So only if the patient is having severe infection, maybe I can extend the duration of antibiotics. Otherwise, in most cases, 5 to 7 days of oral antibiotics is going to be sufficient. This is with regards to the latest updates also. So one of the latest updates is the SHIA 2025. So even in SHIA 2025, they clearly mentioned it's not an update basically. So they re-established the fact that for most of the streptococcal infections, especially erysipelas, 5 to 7 days of oral antibiotics is going to be more than sufficient. And it's not really required to give a long-term antibiotic. Coming to cellulitis. Cellulitis and erysipelas can be differentiated from the fact it's going to affect the deeper parts of the dermis and even subcutaneous tissue. So it's not just going to affect the upper dermis, it's going to affect the deeper parts of the dermis. So the most common cause of cellulitis, though, is going to be Staphylococcus aureus. So it can be still caused by gas, that is group A Streptococcus, but like the most common cause, I would say, is going to be Staph aureus. It's not actually gas, it's actually Staph aureus here. Because it's Staph aureus, there is always risk of MRSA, that is methicillin-resistant Staph aureus. So the most important clinical difference between your erysipelas and your cellulitis is going to be the fact that cellulitis is going to be more poorly demarcated. It's going to be more diffuse in nature. It's going to affect the deeper parts. So it's not going to be well demarcated. And they're going to have lots of fever. I mean, erysipelas patients can still have fever, but I would say it's more of discomfort and erythema that makes the patient come to the hospital more than the fever itself. There could be slight fever as well. But here, because it's more deeper and a diffuse infection, patients will be suffering from spiking fever, very high-grade fever. There's going to be diffuse leg swelling as well because it's going to cause a lot of edema in that area because of inflammation. So one of the most important risk factors, again, here is going to be diabetes. I would say whatever cellulitis cases that we encounter in common practice are all related to diabetes. and in combination with trauma. So most of the diabetic patients who are already having a poor glycemic control, if they sustain a trauma to the leg, so even it could be a scratch in a poorly controlled diabetes, that becomes a major risk factor. So that's going to result in cellulitis or presence of abscess in the background. And please understand that cellulitis itself can be associated with abscess. So the deep pockets of infection, some of them can turn into subcutaneous abscess. That is quite possible in cellulitis, but abscess itself is a risk factor for cellulitis. So cellulitis can be related to underlying, can be associated with abscess, and abscess can increase the risk of developing a cellulitis. Both are correct. And patients can have underlying osteomyelitis also that can result in cellulitis. So especially in diabetics, if it's a chronic non-healing ulcer, you have to always think of underlying osteomyelitis. So it's better to take an X-ray also in that case. And of course, venous stasis is also a risk factor. Even lymphedema is a risk factor according to me to develop cellulitis. But lymphedema is more of a risk factor for lymphangitis and erysipelas more than cellulitis, but can occur. Anything can occur. But again, here the strongest risk factor is going to be diabetes only. And diagnosis is going to be clinical because it's a deeper infection. It can get disseminated systemically. So you might sometimes get blood culture positivity with Staph aureus or group A Streptococcus, but that's very rare. So mostly it's going to be a clinical diagnosis. And again, the treatment is going to be tailored towards Staph aureus rather than gas infection because this is almost always caused by Staph aureus. So in case if you're considering oral options, then augmentin, that is amoxicillin, clavulanic acid, or cefalexin, which is the first generation cephalosporin, must be enough, especially if it's a streptococcal suspicion or MSSA, that is methicillin sensitive Staph aureus. But if you're thinking in terms of MRSA, so when you will think in terms of MRSA, I would say the most important risk factor, this is practically very important, is going to be recent antibiotic exposure. Recent antibiotic use or recent antibiotic exposure, especially in the last 3 months, I would say. So that's a strong risk factor for MRSA. And another very, very strong risk factor is going to be recent hospitalization. Recent hospitalization. So these two are extremely strong risk factors as far as your MRSA is concerned. So if you have any of these risk factors, there are so many, like if the patient is having underlying infective endocarditis or a known case of MRSA in the past, or they carry MRSA in the nose, like for example, if you have done some nasal swabs or swabs from the nares in the past and it showed MRSA, or your prevalence in the community is more. I'm talking about MRSA. MRSA prevalence in the community is more according to your local data. So there are other things also, but I feel like these two are going to be the most important deciding factors, whether you're thinking in terms of MRSA or not, because you're going to anyway start with empirical antibiotics. So you have to know this. So what are the drugs that are oral and can cover MRSA? It's going to be cotrimoxazole, doxycycline, and or clindamycin. But generally, I go against clindamycin because clindamycin is not a very good drug. It's a bacteriostatic drug. Plus, it has a high risk of Clostridium difficile colitis. So in my practice, I generally tend to use linezolid oral. Especially if the patient is very sick, I'll be using oral linezolid instead of clindamycin. That's a much better choice, I would say. But anyways, according to textbooks, it's going to be either cotrimoxazole, doxycycline, or clindamycin. All of them are oral drugs, but still they have MRSA cover. In case if you're thinking in terms of a sick patient, a very sick patient, a cellulitis guy in shock, severe sepsis, I have to give IV. Again, I have to decide whether I'm going to cover MSSA or MRSA based on these risk factors and other risk factors. So if you're thinking in terms of MSSA, then anti-staphylococcal penicillins are going to be more than enough, like nafcillin, cloxacillin, oxacillin, dicloxacillin, or first generation cephalosporin like cefazolin. But if you're thinking in terms of MRSA in a sick patient who's having severe sepsis, then it's better to go for either vancomycin or daptomycin. Linezolid is okay in this case because we have IV linezolid also, but it's a bacteriostatic drug at the end of the day. And in a patient who's having high organism burden, severe sepsis or septic shock, linezolid is not going to be enough, even though it's going to cover MRSA, but it's not a very good drug in severe sepsis patients or bacteremic patients. So I would go for either Vanco or Dapto, which have excellent cover it in response to MRSA, plus at the same time, it's going to reduce the bacterial load like anything because it's a cidal drug. Okay, even for cellulitis, for most cases, 5 to 7 days of oral antibiotics is sufficient, or 5 to 7 days of IV antibiotics is also going to be sufficient, right? So these are the two basic infections to begin with.